The little girl's scream cut through the quiet afternoon like a crack of thunder. She ran barefoot down the sunlit street, her pink dress fluttering wildly, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked cheeks as if her small heart could no longer hold the weight of what she had seen. The neighborhood was calm, birds chirping lazily in the warm daylight, sprinklers ticking across green lawns, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked without urgency. But her cry carried something different, something desperate, something urgent enough to stop time itself. A patrol car had just turned onto Maplewood Lane when she ran straight toward it, waving her trembling arms. Officer Marcus Hale barely had time to register the panic in her eyes before she reached his open door. Her voice shook as she pleaded for him to follow her home, her tiny hands gripping his sleeve as though letting go would mean losing everything. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, and her lips quivered with words that tumbled over each other in fear. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet heroes who walk among us every day, take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs a reminder of hope, and subscribe to And Stories. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Officer Marcus had been on the force for nearly 12 years. He had seen arguments that escalated, accidents that shattered families, and moments of tragedy that haunted his sleep. But something about this little girl, her eyes wide with terror yet burning with determination, made his instincts flare. Her name, he would soon learn, was Nora Whitfield, and she was only 7 years old. Yet in that moment, she carried herself with the urgency of someone far older. The sun hung high in the bright blue sky, casting golden light over the quiet suburban homes. It was the kind of peaceful day where nothing seemed wrong, where neighbors waved politely and children rode bicycles without worry. Marcus crouched to Nora's level, speaking gently, trying to steady her trembling shoulders. He asked where her parents were, what had happened, but she only repeated the same words through broken sobs, insisting that he follow her home immediately. She tugged at his hand, fear making her small body shake. Marcus made a quick decision. He radioed in his location, explaining that a minor was requesting assistance, and assured dispatch he would investigate. He sensed this was not a prank or childish exaggeration. The desperation in Nora's eyes could not be faked. It was raw and unfiltered. As they hurried down the sidewalk together, Nora running ahead and constantly glancing back to make sure he was still there, Marcus felt a strange tightness in his chest. The houses blurred slightly as his focus sharpened. Every second seemed stretched, heavy with possibility. They stopped in front of a modest, pale yellow house with peeling paint near the windows. The front yard was unkempt, grass growing unevenly, as if maintenance had not been a priority for some time. The curtains inside were drawn halfway despite the bright daylight. Nora pointed toward the front door with shaking hands, her breathing uneven. Marcus approached carefully. He knocked firmly and announced himself. There was no response. He knocked again, louder this time. Still silence. Nora's sobs grew louder. She whispered that her father would not wake up. That she had tried and tried. That she had shaken him and called his name but he would not open his eyes. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. He tried the doorknob. It turned easily. Inside, the house felt heavier than the warm afternoon outside. The air was stale, the living room dim despite the sunlight pressing against the windows. Toys were scattered on the floor, simple things, worn but loved. A small backpack rested near the couch, as though Nora had dropped it in a hurry. On the sofa lay a man in his late 30s, unmoving. His name was later confirmed as Elijah Whitfield. His face was pale, his breathing shallow and uneven. An empty pill bottle lay on the coffee table beside him. Marcus moved instantly, checking his pulse, calling for emergency medical services through his radio with a tone that left no room for delay. He began basic first aid, keeping his voice calm despite the storm building inside him. He had seen overdoses before. Sometimes they ended in heartbreak. Sometimes they ended in second chances. He prayed silently this would be the latter. Nora stood frozen in the doorway, clutching the hem of her dress, her eyes locked on her father. She had done everything she knew to do. She had tried to wake him. She had splashed water on his face. When that failed, she had done the bravest thing she could imagine. She had run outside alone and flagged down help. The sirens arrived quickly, their wail slicing through the afternoon calm. Paramedics rushed in, working with swift efficiency. They administered treatment, speaking in urgent but controlled tones. Minutes felt like hours as Marcus stood nearby, his jaw tight, offering quiet reassurance to Nora. Finally, there was a shift. A small movement, a cough, A gasp of air that sounded like life clawing its way back from the edge. Elijah's eyelids fluttered weakly as paramedics stabilized him. He was rushed to the hospital, lights flashing as the ambulance sped away. Nora tried to run after it, but Marcus gently held her back, kneeling down to promise her that she would see her father soon. The next hours were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and coordination with child services, not as punishment, but as protection. It became clear that Elijah had been struggling with depression since losing his job months earlier. The weight of financial stress, shame, and isolation had grown silently until it nearly consumed him. Nora had been his anchor, his reason to keep moving forward. But even anchors can strain under too much pressure. At the hospital, Marcus stayed longer than required. He sat with Nora in the waiting room, offering her a juice box from the vending machine and listening as she explained in small, broken sentences how her father used to build blanket forts with her in the living room. How he made the best pancakes shaped like animals. How he told her bedtime stories about brave princesses who saved kingdoms. Her father was her hero. And heroes, in her young mind, were not supposed to fall. Hours later, a doctor emerged with cautious optimism. Elijah was stable, he would need care, support, and time, but he was alive. When Nora was finally allowed to see him, she tiptoed into the hospital room as if entering sacred ground. Marcus remained by the doorway, giving them space yet unable to look away. Elijah's eyes filled with tears the moment he saw his daughter. He looked smaller somehow, stripped of pride and illusion. The reality of how close he had come to leaving her alone forever hit him with crushing force. He reached for her hand weakly, and she wrapped her tiny fingers around his. There were no grand speeches, no dramatic declarations. Just silent tears and the unspoken understanding that something had to change. In the weeks that followed, something remarkable happened. Community members who had once merely waved from across lawns stepped forward. A neighbor named Clarissa Morgan organized a meal schedule. Another neighbor offered to help Elijah update his resume. Marcus visited on his days off, not as an officer, but as a friend. Elijah began therapy and joined a support group. He learned that asking for help was not weakness, it was courage. Nora returned to school with a quiet strength that surprised her teachers. She drew pictures of police cars and sunshine and wrote a simple sentence at the bottom of one page, "Thank you for saving my daddy." Marcus kept that drawing in his locker at the station. The house on Maplewood Lane slowly transformed. The grass was trimmed. The curtains were opened wide to let sunlight flood the rooms. Laughter returned, cautious at first, then fuller with time. Elijah found part-time work at a hardware store. It was not the career he once had, but it was honest and steady. More importantly, he found purpose again, not just in providing, but in being present. Months later, on a bright summer afternoon, the neighborhood gathered for a small block party. Children ran across lawns, music drifted through warm air, and tables overflowed with homemade dishes. Nora proudly introduced Marcus to anyone who would listen, telling them he was the reason her daddy was still here. Elijah stood beside her, healthier, stronger, grateful beyond words. He had learned that rock bottom was not the end. Sometimes it was the foundation for rebuilding. Before this story ends, if it has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, comment, and share it. And if you believe that small acts of courage, like a 7-year-old running toward a police car, can change lives, subscribe to And Stories. Your engagement helps spread these messages of hope further than you know. Special request. Comment, "Hope lives," if you believe no one is ever truly alone. On that bright afternoon, as sunlight filtered through tree branches and children's laughter filled the air, Marcus watched Nora chase bubbles across the yard while Elijah smiled, fully present in the moment. The scene was simple, ordinary, beautiful. The day Nora ran barefoot down the street could have ended in tragedy. Instead, it became a turning point. A reminder that sometimes the smallest voice carries the loudest plea. That sometimes bravery looks like a child asking for help. And sometimes, salvation arrives not in grand miracles, but in a patrol car turning down the right street at the right time. The world did not change overnight. Bills still needed to be paid. Healing still required effort, but something fundamental had shifted. Shame had been replaced with support. Silence had been replaced with conversation. Fear had been replaced with connection. And in one small yellow house on Maplewood Lane, a father and daughter were given another chance at tomorrow. Because on an ordinary sunny day, a little girl chose courage over fear. And that courage saved a life.